There are probably millions of restaurants in America, and millions more from the past decades. In the 70s, we had so many of them that no one knew what to choose from. Some of them were really good, others were terrible, and a lot of them were in between. So, what happened to the really good ones that became terrible? Well, that's why we're here today. Join us as we talk about the 20 worst restaurants from the 70s no one wants to eat at. 1. Wags.
To America's family restaurant, Wags.
There's one thing that bugs me a lot. Why do people call restaurants like these fast food? In those days, and even decades before that, they were called quick service restaurants. At some point, Wags was supposed to be a difference maker in this sense, but it fell off so hard that it must have broken its legs. Wags was the brainchild of Walgreens in the 70s. This was a time when drugstores experimented with all kinds of ways to get people in the door, even if they had to serve bang-average food in the process. Before you get defensive, I know a lot of you loved Wags, but by the time it became a full-fledged chain, it could no longer keep up with the high standards it set for itself in the beginning. Wags was known for being a step up from the average fast food place. Their sandwiches were legendary. Remember that juicy roast beef? As if that wasn't enough, their breakfast items were served all day long. A diner-style burger with a side of crispy fries washed down with a milkshake was the ultimate Wags experience. It was also the place where late-night cravings for pancakes or a club sandwich could be satisfied with the snap of your fingers. This is something most fast food chains today don't offer. It's no wonder so many folks went ballistic over Wags. Yet, despite its initial success, Wags found itself in a crowded market by the late 80s. Casual dining chains like Denny's and IHOP offered similar menus, while fast food giants like McDonald's kept raising the bar. Because it couldn't keep up with the other sharks in the water, Walgreens decided to pull the plug, selling off most Wags locations by 1991. Though some still miss the late-night diner vibes that set Wags apart, let's not dare forget our next entry, which had food so cheap and yummy that it's a wonder why it lost its way at the end. 2. Burger Queen.
Listen, I know Burger Queen's got great hamburgers.
Queen of Burgers was pure royalty until it wasn't. Before the newbies make any judgments, those who were alive to witness it knew Burger Queen was more than a cheeky knockoff, even though it sounds like it. This restaurant was truly its own thing. Burger Queen was established in 1956. Starting in the Louisville, Kentucky area, this regional chain aimed to be the southern counterpart to Burger King. By the 70s, Burger Queen was known for offering more than just burgers. They even had fish sandwiches and fried chicken. This made them the Usain Bolt of quick service food. They were flying away with not one sign of stopping. Their mascot, Queenie Bee, became a friendly face millions knew very well. The burgers at Burger Queen were great, but don't you think it was their royal treat desserts that really hit the spot? Whether it was soft serve ice cream dipped in chocolate or a classic milkshake, anyone who knew their way around food flocked to Burger Queen for a sweet treat after a meal. Dare we forget their signature Whopper burger? It was a direct challenge to the Whopper, but in the end, Burger Queen found itself struggling to stay relevant. In 1981, the chain decided to give itself a makeover. It changed its name to Druthers. That was the beginning of the biggest quality decline seen since the flop of the recent Star Wars movies. By the late 80s, most Druthers locations were either sold off or turned into Dairy Queens. So in a sense, the queen was dethroned by the king, only to become a more irrelevant queen. Let's thank the heavens that the food at our next location did not become as bad as Burger Queen was towards the end of its reign. 3. Sambo's.
You can dine for $1.99 at Sambo's. Now, till May 11th, our dinner special is Sambo's all-beef chopped steak. Chili.
Initially, it seemed like a winning formula, a cozy, family-friendly diner serving stacks of pancakes at affordable prices. So, what went wrong? Sambo's began in 1957 with a name that came from a combination Sam Battistone and Newell Bonnet. It came from Santa Barbara, California, a state where a lot of high-flying restaurants found their roots. By the early 70s, Sambo's had grown into a powerhouse with all the horsepower of a Formula One car. It was breakfast all day, every day. People came for the pancakes, but they stayed because their tummies were stretched to the max. Sambo's was legendary, to be honest. That's what makes its downfall so sad that you could shed tears over it. That was the standard place for a weekend breakfast with the family, where you'd find towering stacks of hotcakes drenched in syrup, alongside endless refills of piping hot coffee. They also served burgers and fries, but no one really cared for that. It was the pancakes that brought in the loyal customers. Or don't you agree? What was your favorite memory about Sambo's? Do you ever wonder what went wrong? Well, the trouble started with the name. Over time, as the country became more culturally aware, protests began over the racial implications tied to the term Sambo, which referenced a character from a controversial children's book. By the late 70s, the name of the business became overwhelmingly distasteful. It almost became a taboo to eat at Sambo's. The company tried to change its name at some locations, but the damage was done. By 1982, the chain went bankrupt, and most of its restaurants were closed or sold. While its name has faded because of a sketchy naming tradition, our next entry went kaput because of a sketchy cooking tradition. 4. Sandy's.
Big Scott, Big Scott.
Sandy's Big Scott.
There was a guy who told a story about working at Sandy's. When they ran out of lettuce, they just put a leaf of cabbage on the burgers. And nobody noticed. So much for the Scottish rival to McDonald's. It was created in 1956 by a group of Illinois-based McDonald's franchises who wanted more autonomy. Remember their mascot? It was a jovial, kilt-wearing Scottish lad, which gave the brand a playful identity. By the 70s, Sandy's had expanded to over 200 locations in the Midwest, offering an alternative to the Golden Arches. With the 15-cent burger being a popular go-to, Sandy's was known for its budget-friendly menu. Their fries were legendary. They often outshined their bigger competitors, and their signature shakes had a rich, creamy texture. Some remember the chain for its tartan decor, which added a bit of charm to the restaurant scene. As the 70s progressed, competition in the fast food market intensified. In 1973, Sandy's merged with Hardee's in a bid to survive against the ruthless giants of the industry. The brand was gradually phased out, with most locations converted to Hardee's by the late 70s. What a shame, though. They really had some good food in their prime. If only they could keep up with that pace, then maybe more people might be willing to eat their grub today. Sadly, their fate ended just as disastrously as the unfortunate next entry on our list. 5. Burger Chef.
Would like to have your family over for dinner. Burger Chef goes all out to please your family.
Does no one else remember the legend that gave us the Happy Meal before McDonald's could even dream of it? From quick service restaurants, this was one fast food innovator that just couldn't last. Burger Chef began in 1954, and it wasn't just another burger joint. Created in Indianapolis, it quickly grew into one of the largest chains in the country by the 70s, with over 1,000 locations. Now that's dominance right there. But where did it all go to? We'll get to that later. Burger Chef was one of the first to introduce the concept of the combo meal, something we all take for granted today. They also pioneered the build-your-own-burger bar, giving customers the kind of creative control over their meals that folks with dangerous cravings shouldn't have. The fan favorite was the Super Chef Burger, which was a direct contender to McDonald's Big Mac. It was topped with cheese, lettuce, and a tangy sauce. Their flame-broiled burgers were considered a step up from other fast food competitors, and they had a unique way of packaging fries and burgers in their iconic orange and blue branding. Many remember the anticipation of sitting down to customize their burgers at the salad bar, which felt like being the first person to walk on the moon at that time. Their sudden demise came from nowhere. The reason no one wants to eat there again has its roots in a cocktail of overambitious expansion, a sudden spike in competition, and a dash of crime. When Burger Chef came out with the fun meal, they assumed that if McDonald's would try to follow suit, they could be sued. What they didn't expect is losing the lawsuit. This put a serious hole in their business. Another incident that put a dent on them was the kidnapping of their employees, which resulted in them losing their lives. What really made everyone mad was that the company tried to paint them as robbers before the truth came out. After that, things started to go terrible for them. In 1982, the chain was sold to Hardee's, and slowly but surely, the Burger Chef name vanished from the landscape. By 1996, all the remaining locations were converted, which meant Burger Chef was gone forever. 6. Beefsteak Charlie.
I'm Beefsteak Charlie, and you're gonna get spoiled with free shrimp.
Thick, juicy steaks cooked up just like you like on
Steak was the star of the show at Beefsteak Charlie's, served sizzling and juicy with all the trimmings. It was all you can eat, and then some. Where can you find something like that today? Not anywhere I know of. Sure, maybe it's gone for a reason, but what made the experience stand out was the never-ending shrimp cocktail and the overflowing salad bar, complete with pasta salads and coleslaw. Beefsteak Charlie's dates back to the early 1900s, but it wasn't until the 70s that the chain became a New York City icon. Their mission was straightforward: deliver hundreds of affordable steak dinners paired with unlimited salad, shrimp, and wine. By the end of the decade, Beefsteak Charlie's had expanded into a full-blown chain across the East Coast, luring in customers like a moth to a flame. Customers could help themselves as much as they wanted. Every meal was a buffet fit for a millionaire. Are you forgetting the endless beer and wine? This was a feature that gave Charlie's a little more of an upscale vibe, but despite its early success, success, Beefsteak Charlie's couldn't maintain this magic formula forever. By the mid-80s, expensive overhead costs and the sheer volume of food they gave away for free made profitability tough. By the early 90s, the chain began to fizzle out. Good riddance to it too, because towards the end of its reign, Beefsteak started taking so many liberties with the quality of its food that many of its regulars were forced to abandon it altogether. That sad story is mirrored in so many other restaurant downfalls, but probably none more than the next restaurant on our list. 7. Wimpy's.
The 50s and 60s vibe. Let's dive into Wimpy's Diner that has been serving Canadians for the last 5 decades.
Wimpy's may have gotten its start in the 1930s in Chicago, but it wasn't until the 50s, 60s, and 70s that it truly caught fire. Well, in the figurative sense at least. Named after J. Wellington Wimpy, this chain was soon flipping patties across the US and UK at the height of its powers. Wimpy's was one of those rare burger joints that tried to class things up a bit. Imagine getting your burger served on an actual plate with utensils and all that, like a real adult meal. Wimpy's had its dedicated fans, especially for their quarter pounder, always paired with crispy fries and a milkshake so thick you could build biceps just trying to drink it. But here's the thing, isn't half the fun of fast food being able to eat it with your hands? Napkins be damned. Then there was also the famous bender in a bun, which sounds like something you'd order after a long night out. It was actually a sausage sandwich topped with onions and ketchup. That all sounds great, but consistency is where the game is at. Despite its efforts, Wimpy's couldn't keep up with the game. By the end of the decade, most of its US locations were toast. Over in the UK, they managed to hold on a little longer. But let's be real, when was the last time you saw a Wimpy's? It's not like you'll choose Wimpy's out of something other than nostalgia, but our next entry made such a name for itself that I really feel it can make a solid comeback in today's world. 8 Arthur Treacher's.
In a hungry mood and you're looking for some food.
Moving off the treat, your smile on your face.
How can a restaurant be more famous than the actor it's named after? British actor Arthur Treacher. This chain kicked off in 1969 with a mission to introduce Americans to the wonders of deep-fried fish, and boy did it take off. By the mid-70s, Arthur Treacher's was everywhere. With over 800 locations strong, it brought a bit of the British seaside to US shores. At a time when burgers were king of the fast food jungle, Arthur Treacher's offered a treat for the seafood lovers out there. But let's be honest, how many of us really know who Arthur Treacher was? People cared more about his fish frying game than his acting. You probably loved that iconic crunch of the battered fish fillet, made with North Atlantic cod, fried to golden perfection. You could practically hear it crackle as it hit the tray, and those thick hand-cut fries were the perfect sibling. It was like a mini vacation to the British seaside, minus the seagulls and unpredictable weather, of course. And who could forget the hush puppies? You've got to admire the confidence. Was it necessary to throw in a savory, sweet, deep-fried ball of dough as a side? Probably not. Did we love it? Sometimes. For those looking to break free from burger monotony, Arthur Treacher's was the plug for a while. But it does make you wonder. In a world dominated by burgers, how long could fried fish and chips really last before the tides turned? Based on how it went down, not that long. No one wants to eat there anymore, and it leaves us wondering why. As for our next entry, it's a bit easier to pinpoint why people run away from it. 9. Stuckey's. Stuckey's started out as a humble pecan stand on the side of the road in Georgia back in the 1930s, but by some stroke of luck in the 70s, it had blossomed into a nationwide road trip icon with over 350 stores. If you were cruising down America's highways in that era, chances are you couldn't avoid a Stuckey's stop even if you tried. It was the place where travelers refueled, grabbed a bite, and loaded up on the kind of souvenirs you'd immediately regret buying. Who doesn't need a plastic alligator keychain, right? The charm of Stuckey's was in its cozy, family-friendly vibe, offering comfort food, snacks, and, most importantly, those famous pecan log rolls. Seriously, was it even a road trip if you didn't stop at Stuckey's for one of those sugary, nut-covered marvels? The food wasn't exactly Michelin star material, but you could always count on a hot dog, burger, or a plate of Southern comfort food to get you through the next stretch of highway. It was as dependable as your best friend from middle school. The real stars of Stuckey's weren't the burgers. It was the snacks, pecan pralines, and nut candies. You've got to wonder, though, how much pecan-related food does one family need? Sadly, when corporate giants rolled in, Stuckey's couldn't keep pace. So, next time you're cruising down a highway and pull into a gas station, maybe take a moment to remember the simpler days. And speaking about simpler days, up next we have a long, forgotten, but sorely missed restaurant that will surely trigger treasured memories. 10 Bennigan's.
Bennigan, we need this now.
Now?
Tonight.
Like tonight?
Like yesterday?
When you need to
Not tomorrow?
escape from the everyday.
Tonight.
Escape to Bennigan's.
When Bennigan's was in its prime, that was where hardworking parents would take you and your siblings for a special treat. And looking back now, it couldn't have been easy for them. They bent over backward just to give us those moments. But of course, as a kid, you're blissfully unaware of the sacrifices your parents are making. You're just there for the mozzarella sticks. People loved Bennigan's. Out of all the casual dining spots like Chili's, TGI Fridays, Applebee's, Red Robin, and Ruby Tuesday, Bennigan's was the one you would always choose hands down. It had that perfect mix of a lively atmosphere, hearty food, and, if memory serves, the best chicken tenders known to humankind. Sure, there are still about 15 Bennigan's left in the US, but the one near you probably just isn't the same as it was back in its heyday, don't you agree? I mean, do places ever really live up to our childhood memory? Or is it just that nostalgia makes everything taste better? Either way, Bennigan's in the 70s and even 80s was unbeatable. We're going back to back with the trip to memory lane here, so let's take you back to when casual dining was more than just a microwaved burger with our next entry. 11 Howard Johnson's.
Good food at home.
Howard Johnson's is such a friendly place to have good food.
Believe it or not, Howard Johnson's was actually good in the 60s and even into the 70s, and we have none other than Jacques Pepin to thank for that. Yes, the Jacques Pepin, a cooking legend, was once developing recipes for them. Who knew fast food could have such a sophisticated sous chef? Howard Johnson's was practically the McDonald's of the 70s. You couldn't miss that signature orange roof standing like an advert board for road trippers across America. With over 1,000 locations, it was one of the go-to pit stops for anyone hitting the highways. Imagine the variety: fried clams, 28 flavors of ice cream, and a classic grilled hot dog that somehow tasted better after hours on the road. Does it get more luscious than that? But like all good things, it didn't last forever. Mix in some questionable management choices, and those famous orange roofs started to disappear. By the early 2000s, there was only one left standing, and in 2017, it closed its doors for good. So now, Howard Johnson's is nothing more than a ghost from the distant past. But let's be honest, did anything ever taste as good as you remember? 12 Lums.
All Lum's burgers are cooked to order. All choice beef. Maybe Lum's will name one after me.
Say you already have, Mr. Burrow. That's why they're called hamburgers.
Lum's, no one else will give you more.
Lums started in the early 1950s as a humble hot dog stand in Miami Beach, founded by two brothers with big dreams and a soft spot for hot dogs and beer. By the time the 70s rolled around, Lums had grown into a national chain with its own quirky spin on fast food. Lums had the upper hand on your average joint because it was one of the first chains bold enough to serve beer alongside its menu. A cold brew with your hot dog? Now that has to be an upgrade, right? The menu was a bit of a mixed bag. Hot dogs, burgers, and the piece de resistance, their famous steamed beer-battered buns. Seriously, who knew buns could actually taste that goo? Lum's hot dogs, wrapped in those steamy buns, made every bite feel first class. Hope you're not forgetting the Lum's special. This special creation was a hot dog so loaded with toppings, it could probably double as a building. Are you still on Team Burger after hearing that? The vibe they went for was dark wood paneling, a bar in the corner, and an atmosphere that felt more like your local pub than a fast food joint. While it wasn't exactly friendly for the kids, it still found a way to fall out of favor with the masses. Up next is a joint that kids of all ages could spend hours inside without feeling out of place. 12. The Brown Derby. What was the Brown Derby like? Imagine you're eating a prime rib, and there's a chance the person at the next table could be a movie star, or at least someone playing one. How's that for ambiance? Established in 1929, the Brown Derby picked itself up by the bootstraps until it became the spot to see and be seen in Hollywood. I mean, when your building is shaped like a derby hat, how could you not attract attention? The original location on Wilshire Boulevard quickly became the go-to hangout for movie stars, producers, and anyone who wanted to brush shoulders with the Hollywood elite. By the time the 70s rolled around, the Brown Derby had expanded to multiple locations, even landing one at Walt Disney World. Without being too snobby, the Brown Derby's menu was fancy. The iconic Cobb salad is a case in point. It was created by the owner, Bob Cobb. Yes, that's his real name. You could dive into prime rib, fried chicken, and other classics, all while possibly eavesdropping on some juicy celebrity gossip. Sounds like a good deal, doesn't it? The decor was just as iconic, with walls lined with caricatures of the famous patrons who dined there. All that couldn't save it from going under, but maybe it can at least be proud that its downfall was not as dramatic as the next restaurant on our list, 13 Chi-Chi's.
Celebration sampler, there's a dozen ways to celebrate.
12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Chi-Chi's celebrate. celebration sampler.
Which restaurant had the best Tex-Mex in America before it imploded? Do you really need us to tell you the answer? Founded in Minneapolis, Chi-Chi's quickly became the go-to spot for Tex-Mex cuisine. With its vibrant decor and festive atmosphere, the restaurant was a celebration of culture and flavors. By the late 70s, Chi-Chi's expanded rapidly, boasting over 200 locations, and introduced dishes that would become staples in the Tex-Mex scene. Who could forget the signature crispy nachos, piled high with melted cheese, jalapenos, and all the toppings? And what about those iconic chimichangas? Chi-Chi's decreated an experience, inviting diners to immerse themselves in the lively atmosphere. With a margarita in hand, wouldn't you feel like you were on a mini vacation? The restaurant was also known for its generous portions and family-style dining, making it the perfect spot for gatherings. But did Chi-Chi's keep up? Some of you must have absolutely loved Chi-Chi's. Maybe you were always ordering Monterey chicken enchiladas, but in one off year, the Chi-Chi's in Pittsburgh got smashed with the hepatitis A outbreak. Something about contaminated field onions from Mexico. No one ever went to Chi-Chi's again. Up next is a more wholesome story, but that doesn't mean anyone would want to touch that restaurant with a 10-foot pole right now. 14 Victoria Station.
When we say Victoria Station is a cut above, that means a lot. Like our famous prime rib, cooked and cut to perfection.
All aboard the steakhouse train. Truth be told, the way Victoria Station got started isn't exactly the stuff of legend. But the story behind their 3-generation legacy of grilling fine steaks, now that's something worth sinking your teeth into. Back in the day when the British were governing Malaya, they were a little too preoccupied to worry about cooking. I mean, with all the croquet and afternoon tea, who had time for the kitchen? Naturally, the task of cooking fell to the butler, but even the most dedicated butler can only juggle so much, right? So he did what any smart person would do. He hired some kitchen help. And let me tell you, these folks weren't just any ordinary kitchen staff. They took steak grilling to a whole new level. Their steaks were more flavorful, more aromatic, and definitely more appetizing than anything you'd get at the average British dinner table. No offense, Brits. The creator of this restaurant happened to be one of those who truly mastered the art of grilling the perfect steak. One day the family was on holiday in England, riding the train, when someone had this genius idea. What if there was a steakhouse inside a train? And, well, the rest is history. Or is it? After all, who wouldn't want to enjoy a fine steak in a train-themed setting? But what caused this popular chain to derail? By the late 1980s, Victoria Station faced financial troubles, struggling to keep pace with changing dining trends and fierce competition from other steakhouses. The novelty of the train car experience couldn't quite mask the operational challenges, and one by one, locations began to close. By the early 1990s, most of the restaurants had disappeared from the map. Was Victoria Station too much of a high-tech concept? Did that contribute to its downfall? If it did, then what can we say about the next restaurant on our list, which was supposed to be simple but exciting enough to survive anything? 15 Roy Rogers? Did you think we'll forget about Roy Rogers? I used to love the Double R Bar Burger. I make my own now, but it's just not the same. Founded in the late 1960s, Roy Rogers was named after the beloved cowboy actor and singer, becoming a staple for families seeking hearty meals. With its first restaurant in Virginia, the chain grew quickly, boasting over 600 locations by the 70s. It combined the excitement of the Wild West with quick dining. Who wouldn't want to enjoy a meal at a place that felt like stepping into a cowboy movie? The star of the show was undoubtedly the roast beef sandwich, served with a variety of fixings. But it didn't stop there. The chain also offered fried chicken, burgers, and their famous Fixin's Bar, where diners could load up on toppings and sauces. Remember the thrill of customizing your sandwich to your heart's content? And let's not forget the crispy fries that always seem to disappear too quickly. Whatever happened must have hit them hard, because Roy Rogers plummeted from the heights of dining to the bottom of the barrel. Speaking about bottom of the barrel, let's talk about a restaurant that knows that all too well. 16. Shoney's Big Boy.
$5.
Gee, Big Boy sure makes a big deal about quality.
Shoney's Big Boy originated in the late 1940s. Big Boy, its distinctive mascot, was a cheerful figure with a double-decker burger. Shoney's was like home away from home at its peak. Who needed a kitchen when a Shoney's was right around the corner? With its welcoming atmosphere, who wouldn't want to sit down for a meal? The menu at Shoney's Big Boy was a buffet of comfort food, featuring their signature Big Boy burger, a juicy double-decker topped with lettuce, tomato, and special sauce. But the real draw was the breakfast offerings served all day. Fluffy pancakes, sizzling bacon, and omelets that could satisfy even the heartiest appetite. Can you remember the joy of digging into a plate of those crispy hash browns, perfectly seasoned and golden? Families flocked to Shoney's for its generous portions and all-you-can-eat salad bar, making it a go-to for birthdays and graduations. While it's gone now, there is still the original Bob's Big Boy in Pasadena, California. You can still head there if you want a taste of memory lane, but I can assure you, their meals are nothing like they were in the past. 17 Steak and Ale.
Prince and Pullman, the best of both worlds. Comes up with us a steak and ale.
Before Steak and Ale, the idea of enjoying a filet mignon or ribeye in a casual restaurant seemed out of reach for most. Founded in 1966 by Norman Brinker in Dallas, wasn't just another steakhouse, it was a game changer in the casual dining industry. Brinker's innovation was making quality steak accessible to middle-class families. But here's where it gets really interesting. Steak and Ale also introduced the first ever salad bar. Yes, that's right. The salad bar we now take for granted at buffets and casual dining restaurants got its start at Steak and Ale, or at least that's what most people say. What hit guests like a giant magnet was the idea of customizing their salads with fresh ingredients. And let's not forget the wood-paneled walls, dim lighting, and the faint aroma of sizzling steaks that gave the restaurant an English pub vibe, offering a dining experience that felt both sophisticated and welcoming. Now, let's talk about a steakhouse that should have been the king for a long time, but ultimately couldn't keep up. 18 Ponderosa Steakhouse.
There's a family feeling at Ponderosa.
Established in the early 1960s, Ponderosa Steakhouse quickly became a staple of casual dining, particularly in the Midwest and the South. By the 70s, it had expanded significantly, boasting over 600 locations at its peak. With a Western theme that evoked the rugged charm of the American frontier, who wouldn't want to dine in a place that promised a taste of the Wild West? Ponderosa was legendary for its all-you-can-eat steak and buffet options. As kids, we ran there sizzling cuts of beef grilled to perfection and served alongside a wide array of sides. Think baked potatoes, crispy fries, and fresh salads. And let's not forget about the infamous salad bar, which was a feast unto itself, filled with everything from pasta salad to a mountain of croutons. Did anyone really leave without indulging in a slice of their decadent dessert? Let's not dwell too much on why no one eats there. You can take a trip to any outlet to find out for yourself, if you can even find one. Finally, we have a restaurant that could have been as big or even bigger than KFC, but destiny had other plans for it. 19 Horn and Hardart. Established in Philadelphia in 1888 and later expanding to New York City, Horn and Hardart was revolutionary in its approach to dining. Known as the first automated restaurant chain in America, it offered a unique experience where patrons could serve themselves from glass-enclosed food dispensers. By the 70s, it had become a beloved institution, blending the convenience of fast food with the charm of a diner. Was there anything more exciting than selecting your meal from a colorful array of choices? The menu at Horn and Hardart was a delightful mix of comfort foods, from creamy macaroni and cheese to deliciously baked pies. Many diners fondly remember the coffee, served in shiny metal pots, and the signature dishes that brought a taste of home cooking to the busy city streets. What's better than opening your lunch reveal a steaming slice of lasagna or a perfectly cooked meatloaf? It was a peak experience, but somehow everything started to go wrong with the turn of the century. Now you'll only find ghosts and spirits eating there. So which of these restaurants can you try for the last time? Did you have any favorites in the past? Let us know what you think in the comments. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your buddies. See you next time.